This right here is a 9 cubic foot mortar mixer. I'll go ahead and start over on the basic service with you. First thing we're going to do is check the fuel. Make sure we're at least on the 3/4 marker. This one is full. Next we're going to come down here and check your oil. Make sure it's good. It just needs to be right there at the neck. We come and inspect the belts. Go back here. Belts look alright. Probably need to be changed pretty soon. You just want to look for cracking and dry rot. Next we're going to come over here and check your air filter. There's a couple of things you need to know when you're servicing these on the air filter system. It is very important to inspect them very thoroughly to make sure no dust or water can get into these. What we do is we take the outer jacket off. As you can see, this is already, somebody's put the wrong filter cover on here, so we'll have to go get a new air filter. Basically, if you see something like that, that's allowing more dirt to come inside of the filter housing. So let me go grab a filter and we'll reinstall a new one. This is our new filter I'm going to reinstall. We already know it's good. I just took the packaging off of it. But generally when you're inspecting these, you're going to inspect your rubber seat inside of here. You also want to inspect the outer filter to make sure there's no tears or cuts. After you've done that, that's good. We're going to go in and we're going to look for sunlight. If you can't see sunlight through the filter, then it's garbage. Generally, if it's dusty, we can tap it out a little bit, but that's about as much as you want to do to it. We'll go ahead and replace the jacket. Make sure that's seated in there all the way. Your jacket needs to cover the whole part of the filter housing, unlike the last one that was on it. And you also want to check right here and make sure this rubber ring's still here. This is going to keep dust and water out of the engine, out of the carburation system. I'm going to take that and reinstall the wing nuts. You want this to be seated all the way down. Doesn't have to be super tight, you just want it to snug it enough to hold it. Now we're going to reinstall the housing cover. Generally when I'm over in this area, I'll check the pull cord system, make sure there's no tears or cuts in this. I'm going to pull it all the way out. Inspect all the way into it, make sure there's no cuts or where it's spraying from hitting on the outside of this. Once you've done that, we go ahead and install that back on there. Next, we're going to go into the greasing process of this. It's right there. Watch out for this one. He's clipped there. Steal your shoes. Back to the service. We're going to start out here in the front with the greasing. Generally, I'll work from one end to the other when I'm greasing stuff. Just keep track of what I've greased. I'm going to go ahead and grease this front bearing. We're going to move on back here. We're going to have another on the opposite end right here. Grease it. Back behind this motor, you've got a couple hidden ones. Sometimes you look in the side housing and see if you can see them. He's right back here, right behind the bolts. That's why you need a flex tube grease gun. A harder one's not going to be able to get back there to it because you've got another one back here behind the wheel. And grease it as well. Then you're going to check your belts, make sure you don't have any cracking or tearing. And that's basically it. Also, we're going to be checking tires on this thing as well. They need to be at 50 psi, which you'll check with your little gauge here, or you can do it with the one hooked to the air hose. If you don't know how many psi something is, it's generally stamped to the side of the tire. It's going to have a couple of numbers. It's going to be one that's lower and one that's higher. The lower one's just for mounting purposes, so you're going to go by that higher number. We're going to check our gauge here. Once it reads 50. Put the cap on. We're going to do the same on the other side. Next, we're going to check for operation. Go ahead and crank it up. Check, make sure everything's moving where it's supposed to be moving. You see, these have two on-off switches. You got one on the outside and then one on the side of the engine block. Sometimes you can get concrete stuck in these. To get it out, the easiest way I found to do it is take a hammer or a dead blow and hit the outside body of this thing. It'll knock any of that concrete loose. Sometimes people have a tendency to bring them back and they've left concrete in them, so the pedals are stuck in place. These are your rubbers here. These things are you can replace these. They're a little bit tricky to get off because you got to peck all the concrete around the bolts. Most of the time I find myself having to cut the studs off. We try not to do that because it takes a little bit longer, but if you can't get it out for any reason, I'd probably consult somebody in the back or a mechanic. So it's most likely you're going to have to cut those off. But that's basically it on the mortar mixer. This is your hitch. This is probably one of the important things here. When you're hooking up, you don't want to have a hitch that's broke off because you'll end up having to make the customer wait about 15 minutes for you to go fix it. We want to inspect this to make sure everything's physically working. Let's make sure we can lock it down. If we can't, then we may need to replace the hitch or readjust it. On these, sometimes you get mortar down in here that'll stick it up. All you gotta do is just bust it loose and it'll hook up a lot easier the next time you go in there to it, just like that. This right here is gonna be your safety chain. We wanna make sure we got a hook on it. And generally that's probably going to be the last thing you check on one of these things as well. So that's about it on the concrete or the mortar mixer, 9 cubic foot.